Welcome along to another episode of the Make Life Work podcast. I am Si Jobling, at Si on Twitter, and for this series I will be talking to people from around the tech scene about balancing work, life, health and side projects. This week I've invited along Mike Hince, a freelance product designer from Shrewsbury in the UK. Mike and I both go way back to the Birmingham tech scene, mostly conversing online and with mutual friends, but have both moved to other nearby regions since. I've long been a fan of Mike's work, especially some of his side projects, which we'll talk about later. Fitness is also a big thing for Mike this year, so all in all, he seemed like another ideal candidate to chat with on the Make Life Work podcast. Let's get into it. Welcome along, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How's you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
So, yeah, I thought you'd be great to chat to. Thanks for giving up the time. I know it's tricky to fit it in.
Yeah, no, I'm pleased to be here.
It's cool. So do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, what you do for a living, and maybe a little bit about how you got there?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a designer since the days of college. I graduated, I did a graphic design in H&D. My first job was designing physical products for like collectibles for like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, trading cards, Pokemon, sort of stuff, all that kind of fun entertainment products. And over the years, we worked on so many huge projects, and I was very lucky to work on some really cool stuff and meet some celebrities along the way, which was sort of an added bonus. And how I ended up becoming a product designer or a UI UX designer these days was in the early days, which was I started a side project, which I'm sure we'll talk to, a game called Directional, and that kind of opened up my portfolio into a way where my previous paying clients that were, sort of more graphic design like brochures and print-based stuff started to see the fact that I was moving into digital, and all of a sudden it took off, and now I'm a very busy product designer and enjoy every day working for myself.
So you come from a physical media background, I guess, like actual printed product design.
Well, I wanted to be a designer in the early days because I really didn't want a proper job, and that is actually the truth. And I remember my portfolio at the time when I went for the graphic design ND interview was basically a portfolio of drawings of cats and stuff. And it's not even a lie, if you want to be a designer, obviously you need that kind of creativity, but you can get started very quickly. And even now, with the amount of stuff online, it's so easy to get into, but obviously you do need that natural flair. And product design, the physical product design side of things was, it was a bit of a lucky break because my first job was an old tutor of mine, and I bumped into him in the street as I was walking to basically sign on to the dole because it was just going horribly and it was really hard to get a job after college. Bumped into him and he was like, I need an extra pair of hands, come along. And that ran on for about 6 or 7 years before the company we were working for collapsed and we were made redundant. And then I decided that I would go freelance, and that was 11 years ago now. So I've been out on the fringes of freelance for sort of a long time, over a decade.
Wow. So you've been doing digital freelance for over 10 years now then?
Yeah, as I said earlier, it started as print, but digital in terms of, I was always designing websites, so I guess you could say I was a digital designer, but in terms of actually doing app design, we're probably looking about 6 or 7 years now, I would have thought.
So yeah, during that wave of there's a massive interest in like app design at that point. I guess it was the early day. It was after the Web 2.0 era, but more mobile apps are taking off and web apps are definitely a thing. So how did you decide that app design was your thing rather than just typical web design? How do you distinguish the two as well?
I've always liked technology, so I've always been interested in new gadgets, and I think we're both very lucky to grow up in an era where technology has boomed really with, Apple and all sorts of, various innovators. So I knew that I was always interested in it. And when I was doing traditional graphic design, I didn't necessarily find it interesting, but the UX side of things and, how things worked really always interested me. So what I really sort of like relish when I work on projects is, I've always been really good with talking to people. From my early days of working on the tills at Toys R Us, I would basically have to talk to everybody, thousands of people a day. You'd have to talk to them and create conversation. And that is a really nice thing about UX design and product design in general, is you do have to talk to people and really get into their head space about what it is they're planning to build and why they're doing it and all those reasons. So from that side of things, it's kind of like, part tech, part people, it's just a nice balance, and I just feel very comfortable with it. It's also, like web design is very maths related. So with print, you can go wrong. Like I've printed stuff that was in Toys R Us for years and years with spelling mistakes, and it's very easy to fix in digital. And I think that's one of my biggest takeaways is, it doesn't have to be right first time, and that is part of my playful nature, I guess.
That's a fair point, actually. I think, like you say, when you're working in the real world, you've got to get it right first time, because people will notice if you don't, and it's very difficult to correct.
Yeah.
Whereas in digital world, it's a lot easier. I wouldn't say it's perfect. I mean, video or photos, once they're out, they're gone. They're not yours anymore.
Yeah.
But with web design, app design, you can iterate, you can make improvements along the way, and people are mindful that bugs can creep through.
Yeah, definitely.
That's cool, man. It's interesting how you've always had that people focus as well, going back to your Toys R Us days, as you talked about, and then you kept that through, working with people.
I think it's really important as a freelancer as well to be able to communicate with people, because I've had lots of, inquiries through on the telephone, and quite a lot of the clients I've worked with have become really good friends of mine because, I'm really honest and personal with people. And I think it's, I think people, when they're spending money with you, they want to know the real you. And it's just really part of, I guess, some of my success is being really honest with people and kind of, like telling it how it is, and, just being the best person you can be. Not always, though. Definitely not always.
Well, no, I think we can all be at fault for that sometimes, but it's a fair point. I think being authentic is crucial to success in life. You've mentioned a few times that you're a freelance, and you've obviously got your own working conditions. Can you talk us through your typical working day? What sort of hours you do, where you work, maybe some of the clients that you've worked with as well, the type of clients?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate again that I can pick and choose my hours, although I do typically stick to sort of like between 8 and 4 or 9 and 5. It's standard working day really, because that's usually when my clients are around. Although, when I'm working with American clients, or, I've worked with people in Singapore and Dubai and, all over the world really, Australia, it can be more challenging to get the time you need with the client, but it's more doable. So being flexible is fine. My working day typically starts about sort of 6:30 or 7. I take the wife to the station. I come back. I make coffee. I'm usually at my desk. I find myself I work better between the hours of like 8 and sort of like 1, and then sort of like I work quite well again from sort of 3 onwards. That sort of like after lunch period, I'm kind of like always a bit sort of struggling to get back into it. But so yeah, I kind of try and keep it fairly normal. I know I've spoke to loads of freelancers that kind of will work in the middle of the night and stuff, but I'm very much try and keep it fairly office hours, if you like, because then my work balance is quite good, and I can walk the dog and stuff as and when I want. So as long as I put the hours in and the projects get done, then my clients seem happy.
Okay, that's really interesting. I like the fact that you are quite disciplined on your times, because I think as a freelancer it's very easy to just go, well, I'm in the office already, I might as well crack on, or
yeah,
this project's not finished yet, I need to keep going.
Yeah, I have spoken to a lot of people that, say to me, I don't know how you work from home. I find it really hard. I find it, I can't get anything done, or I'm just too easily distracted. And I guess it's just more to do with the fact of, I think, one, I prefer being busy. If I've got lots on, I'm more disciplined. If I don't have a lot on, or if I'm having a couple of quiet days, it really distracts me from my creativity, and I find it really hard to get back into. And I think, doing it for 11 years on my own, you do form a discipline, and I think, it does become a bit of a skill. People do sort of think of it of, oh, well, you work from home, so you must not work. But, I don't think we'd survive if we didn't work. So I can confirm freelancers who work from home do actually put hours in, but within reason.
Well, that's why you do it, I guess, though, isn't it? You want that flexibility in your life. You want to have a bit more control over your hours and where you do it. You mentioned there something about, there was two things actually. One was around getting back into it after lunch, for example. I think everyone struggles to do this, especially with massive lunch. What sort of regimes do you have to kind of give yourself that focus and how you're going to finish the day? Or
usually it really is a case of you put the timer on. Like I use Free Agent to track my time and invoices and stuff, and I press the timer button and I'm back at work. And it doesn't always work like that way, and like you can sort of struggle with, for example, if you need answers from clients that aren't available, you always have to try and manage your time in a way that, you're prepared for the day. So, there's that. But on the whole, it's kind of, again, a bit of experience with discipline, really. But it doesn't always go that well. Sometimes you can lose a day and be like, wow, I haven't had the things I need. So therefore, it's technically, it's not all your fault, but you are aware that your time is billable. So if you do decide the fact that actually there's nothing at play here, there's nothing I can get on with, you probably are going to sacrifice some of your earnings. But that comes back to the work-life balance. I'd much rather work on something and get a good job done and know that I've earned that money than just basically, say retainer and be like, well, you've not given me any work, so I'm off, so all that kind of stuff is good fun to play with.
You also mentioned the international clients, Australia, Singapore, America. So with that sort of discipline, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever you do, how do you make that work with all those people, and how do you set that expectation up front as well?
Well, most of my abroad clients seem to be sort of like the East Coast of America, so Boston, New York, that kind of side of things. And they kind of come online quite early because I believe there's like a 5-hour time difference or something. Whereas I have worked with people in San Francisco and stuff, and that is more like an 8-hour time difference. The difference with working with those kind of clients is you have to just basically prepare for the day ahead. So, for example, you'll need to arrange a call at the end of your day previously when they're awake, and just make sure that like you've got everything you need to go and do. In some ways it's quite nice because you don't get interruptions, you don't get phone calls, you just basically do the work and then pitch it to them at the end of the day, and then they'll have feedback waiting for you in the morning. But like recently, in recent years, I have sort of done more work with UK clients and less with the US, and unsure why that is, but sometimes I get really busy with international work, and sometimes it's people in Coventry, so
literally down the road from you then, I guess.
Yeah.
Nice. So can you give us an example of some of the clients you've worked with over the last couple of years?
Oh, I've worked with all sorts, really. Probably no real names that you'll know, but like a lot of startups and growing tech companies, for example. And again, I'm very fortunate to work with companies that in all sorts of areas. So I've like banking, I've done social media, we've done sort of like Internet of Things. Like I've worked on a couple of companies who both sort of talked to each other and said, you should work with this guy, who do like, Bluetooth locks and design their software, like crowdsourcing websites and apps and, charity apps. Pretty much you name it, I've worked on it over the years. It's given me quite a nice broad outlook on, so when a new project comes in, there's usually something I can relate to, and it's quite rare that it's something that I've not at one point it was quite frustrating because, it's like everybody wanted a Facebook feed, type app, and that kind of seems to be moving away a bit more, and their products seem to have more of their own character these days rather than just trying to emulate other apps. So and you'll always get an element of that, but on the whole, I've worked on most sectors, I'd say, for better or worse, and some stuff that you kind of, in the early days, I used to take on projects that I didn't really believe in just to earn the money, because I needed to earn the money, and typically those products would never go anywhere. And in recent years, about 2 years ago, I made the decision to only work on stuff that actually I believe would work as a product and something that I can fully put myself behind. And that's really helped because you're more passionate about the output, and as a designer and a freelancer, I think you need to make some tough decisions in terms of who you work for. And I've had people who are trying to pay me double my rate and stuff for products that I just wouldn't put my name to, and all sorts of like adult entertainment type stuff that and I've just had to even ideas that are vulgar, or companies like I believe at one point I was approached by UKIP or something like that, and things like that, and you just like I'm not interested, sorry, no matter what the earnings is, it's not worth it. So there is an element of morals to it, I guess.
It's really interesting actually, because there's a couple of things there that caught my attention. One, you're quite lucky that you get to pick and choose the work you want to work on, because then that gives you that extra motivation to want to do it, and you're going to focus, and you want to do the best product for them. So that's interesting. The other point is the fact that you've not kind of niched down into an area that you think you're strong at. You've kept your options really open. So I want to pick out those 2 points. It's quite nice that you've been able to do both of them, really.
Yeah, I think then I'm kind of niche to iOS and web app, responsive app design. I don't tend to do much of Android or other items. I don't really do Watch OS. I don't tend to do, other sort of Windows kind of platforms and things like that. So I do kind of focus on iOS and web apps and, sort of progressive web apps, I guess. So, but yeah, in terms of inside those boundaries, I kind of, I find it quite interesting to work on something. So for example, at the moment, I'm working on a company that's like a not-for-profit that is trying to reinvent volunteering, and it's really challenging because you have to work with charities that are typically old-fashioned and won't want to think like Snapchat. They don't want to be Airbnb, but we need to try and work out how we can work through that. So there's a lot of kind of, some days I find myself not even at my computer. Just really like, I don't know what, I need to think. But that's what the hammock's for, so that's good.
I think you covered about that. It's the fact that you're not niched down into a sector, for example, where a lot of people tend to go, well, I'm really strong in, I don't know, retail or whatever it might be. You've kept your options open, and it gives you that flexibility, I guess. You mentioned a little thing there as well about working with people. And I think working in isolation as a freelancer, you don't get to interact with people much. So how have you tried to make that healthier for you, to make sure you're not going insane just sitting at your screen for 8 hours a day?
I think being busy is a huge part of it. And I have, when I wasn't busy in the early days, when, like I was earning sort of like $6,000 a year and, just sort of scraping by and, building websites, even though I'm not a website builder for like £600, just completely just devaluing myself. You do have your low moments, and it is tough. And I think, I've recently moved house and into a really nice area where there's lots of countryside, and we've got a dog, so that helps me get out the house. And little things like that. I go to a lot of fitness classes and stuff like that. So things like that have, in the last sort of like 18 months, have really, maybe 3 years with the dog, but like has really helped me just kind of get out, because otherwise, it is very easy to just basically not see anybody. And I do like my own company. I'm very much like my mother in that sense. My mom is quite happy with, not seeing anybody and just, doing her own thing. And that is very much myself as well. And, my wife is always sort of encouraging me to go out and do things. And I'm like, oh, but I quite like my own company. So, I'm very comfortable with that. And I think that is one of the things about getting older. I'm 38 now. So I'm sort of like approaching 40, and I'm very, very comfortable in my own skin.
Scary you say that, because I'm very similar. I'm approaching 40 next year, and I'm starting to realise, what is important in life. What brings me joy, and quite frankly, it's my children. They're the most important thing to me. I enjoy my job, don't get me wrong, but it's all about my kids. So yeah, trying to find that healthy balance. And like you, I wouldn't live out in the sticks. I'm surprised we've got internet strong enough to make this call at the moment, to be honest. But yeah, I like the fact that you've got the dog, you've got the environment, you've got reasons to leave the house. You use social media to your advantage as well, and you find clients that like to work with you as well, like face to face.
Yeah, I'm really lucky with the client side of things because my website is fairly visible on Google. I get a lot of inquiries, not so much these days, but in like 2015, it was insane. I had like 500 one year, and you can only probably do 10 or 20 of them if you're lucky, really. And so definitely Google doesn't love me as much as it used to, but I still get enough. And the nice thing is my portfolio, people come to me and contact me because they've already seen my work. So it's not like a developer where like, can you do this project? Can you cost this project? It's very much like, I know you do design. I like what you do. I want my design in your style. So that you've already kind of done the hard bit by just them coming to you. So in some ways, I am very lucky that, when I get inquiries, most of it comes down to cost rather than, presentations and having to pitch for work. It is just purely, cost-based stuff, and I try and price fairly reasonable, but at the same token is even if it takes 2 or 3 days, the value that they'll get in the long term outweighs any cost they'll ever pay me. So
it sounds like you've established your brand, your house style over those years. You've matured, you've understood your skills and ability. You don't need to go chasing for leads. They come to you. It's just literally, okay, what can you afford, and are we the right fit now? So it's not. It sounds like you've got a nice balance now.
Yeah, and I always need to, like, a couple of years ago, I was too busy to put any energy into my website and stuff, and I saw a big drop in inquiries and stuff, and then at one point for a couple of, like 3 months or so, that was really tough, and I had to sort of like pay somebody to do some SEO and stuff, and kind of, do all that stuff to try and get me up there, and but I think it started to work in the last sort of like 6 to 12 months, and so it is frustrating because you can be really busy and really tunneled, and then you come out of that tunnel and then suddenly your pipeline's dried up and you've got nowhere to go. So it is a bit of a life cycle, if you will, for getting clients, winning clients and retaining them, really.
You mentioned there actually the fact that you paid someone to do your SEO. I think personally I wouldn't have done that. I would have tried it myself, but it's really interesting that your skills now, and you're giving up your money to find the right people to do the right job for you as well.
Yeah, well, it wasn't, I mean, I can do SEO myself, and, it's very much a WordPress kind of, Yoast approach, but the stuff that I know would only get me so far, whereas the stuff that a guy called Zach on Twitter, he basically spoke to him, and he gave me so much help before I even engaged with him. I knew he was the right person to work with, and basically he has an element of normal SEO, but obviously the technical stuff. So, I'm not a hugely technical person when it comes to code and stuff, and, sort of all that thing. So he was very much, he did a document as if to say, if you go through this tick list and you do all these things for your website, your traffic should improve. And I've dropped the ball again in the last 3 months because I've been busy, but like this morning was the first time I've updated my website in 6 months, and kind of it's quite exciting when you publish new stuff. So it's I knew that I could do it, but I'd rather get that professional opinion to do it right, because I know if you spend £1,000 on, say, SEO, that £1,000 may turn into £100,000 of new work. It's like my laptop. I just off air, we were talking, I've just ordered a new Apple laptop, and the cost was about £3,500. But I know that if that lasts me 4 or 5 years, it's probably like 1 or 0.5% of the actual cost, that it will earn me. So, you do have to invest in stuff. I don't like doing it, trust me. I much prefer the money in the bank for holidays and such, but sometimes you do have to make those decisions.
You do, and you make a fair point. Like I say, we were talking off air about the fact you've bought this new Mac, the shiny new 16-inch, £3,500, so that specced up a little bit then. But like you say, as someone who uses that, that's your tool of the trade, which will last you years. It's not that bad an investment to, compared to what a lot of other trades have to do, so.
And you think about the outgoings as well of the business, like what Sketch is probably like £100 a year, Figma's free. I think I pay like £20 a month for InVision, which I don't really use, but it's got all my archive of prototypes on. So like kind of I can't really get rid of it just yet. I haven't really worked that out. So, in terms of running a cost, I think an accountant cost me £100. So yeah, in terms of a cost, that laptop, it's nothing really in the grand scheme of things.
No, it's a good point. Right, we talked a lot about work. Let's talk a little bit about health and well-being. You just mentioned that you've moved house. You're living in the rural sticks now. So how's that going for you? And how do you feel the benefits already, or what's going on?
So much. Like I was born and raised in Solihull, and we had a house in Solihull for many years, and we needed a bigger house, and we had to eventually move out. So we found a really beautiful Victorian house over in Telford, because like the house prices were so much cheaper, and we were there for 3 years. And as soon as we opened the key to the front door, the neighbour, it was a terrace house, and the neighbour was playing Queen at the top of and we quickly realised that he was a bit of a drug alcoholic. He wasn't a very nice man, and he made our life hell for about 18 months. And when you open the door to your brand new house, that's kind of the sort of last thing you really want. And he moved out, and then other people moved in, and they were still quite noisy and stuff like that. And it kind of really gave us a paranoia around noise and sensitivity. And so at the end of the 3 years, do we remortgage or do we get a new house? And we thought, well, let's try and see what we can afford. And luckily the banks were very favourable, and we now moved to Shrewsbury, which is very, very, I say middle class. It's a middle class area, I guess. And we've got a nice house in a nice neighbourhood, and it really has transformed how we feel about ourselves, because like we've very much learned a lot about ourselves in that time, that we're really sensitive to sound and people, and we want to feel safe and stuff. And that's led to like sort of more of a fitness push from being in an environment where you feel like relaxed with yourself, really.
When our son was born, we decided with work, let's move out of the city and find somewhere a bit more like the suburbs, I guess, just something a bit more relaxed. And then as we've kind of got older, we've moved out into older houses. It's like this weird correlation. The older you get, the more you appreciate older buildings. So yeah, our property now is like 1800s. It's sort of really old. So I get it. It draws you in. It makes you feel a lot better. You enjoy life a bit more. It feels more at ease, I guess. Less going on. Quite a lot of quiet times.
Yeah. And
you mentioned about the fitness as well. I'm like you. I'm out here in sticks. I use it to my advantage for walking and running.
Yeah.
And I think you've been doing similar recently. What's been going on with your fitness?
Yeah, so my wife has always been much fitter than me, and she kind of at the start of the year in January, to be fair to her, she's been going to the gym and stuff like in Birmingham where she works for a long time, but she, because of the train back to Shrewsbury is it's like an hour or so, it's quite a journey, and the gym never really worked for her. So she phoned around and found a local gym that's like, sort of like a 5-minute walk away from us, that is run by like a really nice kind of husband and wife. And basically like she started going to their classes, and she was, raving about it, and, sort of saying, oh, it's really good, and doing strength training and stuff. And she was like, you should go. They do a men's session on a Thursday. You should go and do it. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want fitness. And it was the same year, turning 37, that I realised my body was breaking and my back was in agony, and I was getting a bit bloated, and I had a bit of a stomach on me, and all sorts of stuff like that. And the confidence wasn't there, but I thought, you know what, let me throw myself in it and see what we did. And that Thursday session became Thursday and a Tuesday session, and then now I do PT with the guy on Monday, so I do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I've got a home gym set up, so I do a Saturday workout, and I'm becoming a little bit addicted to lifting weights, and especially when I've completely changed my diet. I've always had bad skin, so I went and saw a nutritionist, and I had a food diary, and she basically said everything you're putting into your body is an inflammatory. That's why you've got terrible skin. So I cut dairy, I cut sugar, I cut wheat. To a degree, at the weekends I cheat. You know, I do cheat probably more than I should, but like I lost a lot of weight. I'm kind of slowly building that back up, and yeah, I'm absolutely loving it. It's it's probably a subject I could talk about too much, so please stop me.
I'm not going to stop you because I've been very similar recently. Like you, I've kind of got to that age. I think I should look after myself a bit more. I was at points when I was working in London. I've got to run for my train, which is about, I think it's about a mile in total from the office to Euston. And I was literally wheezing on the train because from the run. I thought, I'm not that old. I should be able to do this.
Yeah.
So this was probably about 2 years ago. And I started using the gym at work and doing a bit more fitness and stuff. Starting myself up with some challenges to kind of do some long walks. And again, in the last month, I've been on it. You know, I've been using the gym virtually every day or maybe other day where I can. And I'm feeling the benefit, and dietary-wise as well. I'm cut out all the wheat because that just does not agree with me at all. Sugar is really low, but I will treat myself. You know, biscuits here and there, chocolate cake and what have you. I can't be a complete fast, don't touch anything.
I've seen the trolley.
You saw the trolley.
I've seen the trolley on ASOS. Yeah, I know.
It's good.
But yeah, same with me. You know, like I'm like probably the fittest I've ever been in my life. And, you know, like I think my goal at the moment is to be like kind of one of those, like when I get to 40, be absolutely, you know, kind of ripped and just be like, yeah, that's awesome. And then see where that goes from there. But it just changes so much. Like I've got so much more energy. I would always peak. I'd always be like kind of low and then high and then low. And, you know, I would like really need sort of power naps and stuff. And now my energy levels are so much more level. And funnily, without going back into the work, since I've been doing my fitness, you know, I'm so much more billable because I put the time in and I'm more focused and I'm, you know, more level at work. It's quite interesting how they all sort of play against each other.
It's true though, and I think you were saying earlier, like your afternoon lull, you just couldn't get back into it. But I think I don't know now, but it sounds like you've probably found a better level now. You just go, I don't need a big lunch. A little salad or something will keep me going, and then I'll be all right for the afternoon. I don't need that coffee and cake in the afternoon.
Although my PT is trying to get me to eat a lot of calories, like I'm just not a big eater, and he's like, you know, I'm so level. Every time he weighs me, I'm the same. I'm literally the same over and over and over. And he was like, well, at least you're consistent. And so I'm trying at the moment, the last couple of weeks, just eating more food. And I just like, I hate it. It's so boring. Food's so boring. I just like keep stuffing it in. And it's like, okay, well, eventually that will turn into muscle.
It's a fair point. I mean, if you don't enjoy food, it's harder. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're not like a big foodie, let's say, it's hard. I like cooking. I don't know about you though.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but it's hard when you cut out all the treats, like as you say, all the sugary stuff in the week. You know, like I used to love a bottle of Coke and, you know, a sort of meal deal and that kind of stuff. But like when you cut that out, there's no treats. So I'm trying to re-educate myself in terms of actually, you know, like having you know, a nice salad with a bit of bacon or something and some like boiled eggs or whatever is a treat. And it's like, but I really just want jammy Dodgers, you know. I see that will never go away. I will always want junk.
I think I'm like you. I treat myself occasionally, but yeah, the idea of the meal deal is so unhealthy. It's just like bread and crisps with Coke. That's not helping this society. I'm quite happy to have a tasty salad with some nice cheese and meats in there and some, you know, some dressings. The only treat I do find is root vegetable crisps, not potato.
Yeah, I find like the meal deals as well, like so much like plastic waste and stuff, and you do have to try and think about this stuff as, I mean, you know, not that anybody else does, but, you know, it's one of those things, isn't it?
We try. I'm with you on that. The amount of waste is disgusting. Good. Right, okay, we've done health, we've done work. Let's talk side projects, which you alluded to earlier. One of your earlier stages, you built a game, Directional. Do you want to tell us a bit about that and what prompted you, how'd that go, where did it go with it as well?
Yeah, so I mean, as soon as iPhones became a thing, I would always be playing puzzle games, like the Candy Crushes, that kind of, Bejeweled stuff. I was always addicted to puzzle games, and I just liked the idea. I was always playing them in front of the TV and stuff like that. And one day I had the idea of sort of a swiping game where like you had basically up, down, left, right, and you kind of merged. So the corners of the screen, the blocks would fall from different corners, and you had to swipe left to get rid of the left blocks, and you guessed it, directional kind of arrows would form from different ways. And it was my first kind of folly into it, and again I learned lots since then. And I paid a developer about $6,000 to build it, and then later realized that he outsourced it to somebody else for about $2,000. So fun, so you always learn this sort of stuff. But and I later went on to partner with a guy in America who basically sort of like bought into it, and he sort of like paid me sort of half the money back to be a developer on it. And he's kind of running with it now and stuff, and I believe it still exists to a degree, but again, I don't think either of us have very much time to sort of think about it, so it's kind of just in the background there somewhere. But the thing that was really good about that is it sort of like, it was portfolio work, it was tangible, it was something that I could show people. And although it wasn't a commercial success, I tried to sell it for a couple of quid, and it didn't really. I think I sold a couple of them, and then I made it free, and I think it was featured on a few free app promos, and I think we got about 50,000 downloads. But other than that, it was more of a learning exercise than a commercial exercise, which seems to be quite a trend with my side projects.
Yes. So, I mean, I love the story behind your Directional game. I've never gone into the iOS world. I like the idea of it, but the idea of coding in another language is just above me right now. But I love the fact that you outsourced it, and they outsourced it, which must have been a bit of a kicker. But there are some successes around it. You tried paid, you tried free, you got downloads, you got promotions out of it, and like you say, it's portfolio work.
Yeah, and it's something you can talk to real clients about. So when they say, I've got this app, I want to pay so much for it, I'll say, well, you do realise it's very, very hard to get people to pay for your app. So, there are a lot of kind of, here's my experience. And I think clients do really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually. From your experience, if you share that with your clients, that shows one, authenticity again, a bit more experience, and you're learning as you go along, which is one of the best traits I can find in people generally nowadays. You mentioned that it's a bit of a pattern in your side project world. You built a app called Howler.
I did, yeah.
You'll have to tell us a bit more about this, but you actually sunset that after a while as well. So I'll be interested to hear your story about, again, what prompted you to build it, how that went, and how you ended it as well.
Yeah, so Howler was a joke writing app where one person would set up a joke, and then the community of writers would finish the joke, and you would end up with, like, say, 20 different versions of the same joke, if you will, and then people would vote on it, and the best jokes rose to the top, and there was a leaderboard and all sorts of stuff, and it was a really great project to work with. And I partnered with a guy called Martin, who would sort of build the MVP as sort of like a sort of joint ownership of the product, and then we later took on a guy called Lee, who was a very technical guy who'd worked with Martin previously, and he sort of took another sort of chunk of the project. And it was one of those things that it was fairly successful for a really small amount of people. We ended up getting up to 100,000 jokes. I really had to drive the product. Like, I really had to be on there quite often and push the jokes, set up jokes, make sure it was going to Twitter, make sure it was going to Facebook, really drive it. And what ended up happening is I noticed a pattern. The more time I had to put into it, which was earning me no money, the better it was doing, but there was still no commercial aspect to it. So what ended up happening was I decided to put more time into the freelance and actually earn money, and less time into Howler. And all that happened really in that sense was the users dropped off because I wasn't pushing it as much, and it's kind of a bit of a vicious circle. And we tried to turn that MVP into a bit of a fully fledged product, but we tried investment. We reached out to some people for investment, and a lot of the general feedback was, hey, it's a great idea, but how it doesn't really fit into the commercial world really. And, you know, ads don't make any money. We tried ads, all sorts of things like that. And it was just basically one of those things that people really loved, and they, you know, and they still do. And I still get people on Twitter following me and saying, you know, I really miss it and things like that. And I recently tried to relaunch it as a Twitter account, which is still going live, and it gets quite a lot of interaction, but it's nowhere near where it used to be.
There's so many things in that I want to pick out of from what you just said. So, part one, you said you worked with Martin and Lee to start building. Well, you built it with Martin, then you introduced Lee later on. That idea of reaching out and collaborating, how did you go about that, and how did you make that work between a few of you, if you're all freelancing as well?
So Martin actually approached me for some work in the early days, and we originally started trading hours. I'd work on his startup that he had, and then he'd work on mine, and eventually it got to the point where, you know, the stuff I needed for Howler would outweigh what I was doing for him. So I kind of offered him like 20% of the business. It's not a huge amount. And I think that's one of the things I've learned since then is actually, you know what, I think if you were going to do this sort of stuff, you need to be fairly 50-50, because I wouldn't put much time into it for 20% either. So, you know, and then development sort of like, you know, would hit sort of stuff like, hey, everybody's busy, we can't work on this. And, you know, so there, you know, nothing against Martin or Lee, you know, like kind of those guys were brilliant, and I wouldn't have even got anywhere without them. But in hindsight, I think kind of you probably need it to be a more of a full-time project for it to go anywhere. And, you know, it needs more from day one. It probably needed more commercial outlook as well. You know, it needed to really have that kind of where's the money coming from, and we never really worked that out. We had ideas, but really no.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, this is another thing I want to pull out from what you were saying. If you can't commit the time to it, you should probably realise, is it worth continuing? So you said, you know, whenever you put the effort in, you saw the response.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't providing an income, let's say, to justify doing that. So, I mean, being aware of that and making an action out of it is probably something you should be proud of, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I am definitely. I think I always had in the mind that all like the comedians would come to the platform and be really, you know, they'd want to engage with their fans. It was the original idea was it was very much like a professional comedian platform that would have like, you know, a bit like Twitch, you know, like people can be fans and, you know, do that sort of stuff. But the reality is that like professional comedians won't want to give away material, and they certainly wouldn't want to engage in people who think they're funny, because that's their job. You know, they want to be funny. So we did experiment with, you know, sponsored stuff, like kind of, you know, like, hey, this is a pot noodle sponsored whatever, and it's just the amount of investment and stuff you needed to get to it where it needed to be. You needed, like, I always seem to have these ideas that require, you know, millions of users to make it viable, and, you know, sadly you only get about 3,000 or 4,000, and, you know, but that's life.
The final thing I want to pull out on that actually was the fact that the people loved it, and you probably had an emotional connection to what you built. It was something you wanted to make, so you're emotionally connected. Other people enjoyed it, so you feel like you're expected to continue it, even though it's not, you know, feasible. How did you beat that, quite frankly? Because I struggle with this personally.
So we, you know, still have a chat group on Twitter with some of the Howler people, and, you know, we still occasionally people, you know, post there saying how is everybody and stuff, you know. So it was always a really lovely community, even how, no matter how small it was always a really good connected community. And I was very honest with quite a number of the users about, like, you know, the fact that certain stuff isn't working, and, you know, there's frustrations, and, you know, somebody would come to me and be like, oh, the website's really slow, and I'm be like, yeah, it's broken, and then have to beg poor Lee to fix it, you know, like, kind of, and that sort of stuff. And after you know 5 or 10 times of fixing a website that is clearly just buckling under the amount of content we were producing, which is a great thing to do, you know, I think when I made the decision to close it, it was purely about the fact that it's not really going anywhere. There's no commercial avenue for it. We don't have any time to invest in it. You know, people are moving on. The audience had dropped. So, you know, at one point, I think we were getting like 50, 60,000, maybe even 80,000 views a month or something like that. And then, you know, it was dropping to 10,000, 20,000, whatever. You know, it was clearly the trend had peaked and I'd missed it basically. So I made the decision, and just because I'm an evil, cruel person, I decided to close it on April 1st.
Oh, and there's the comedy element of what you're trying to do.
yeah, you've got to.
Oh no, you made something of it though, and I think you probably learnt quite a lot from that. I think that the key there was knowing when it was time to say goodbye.
Yeah,
you use those numbers to your advantage. If you can see that the numbers aren't there, then yeah, it's time.
Yeah, definitely.
I think people have this emotional connection. It's very difficult to say, oh, I've got to stop doing it. I mean, I've got domain names that I've done nothing with for probably 15 years nearly. I should probably let them go, but they just got that emotional connection, and I do feel like at some point it'll be worth doing something with it.
It's actually quite liberating. Like if you've got a project that you're purely doing for yourself or a handful of people, and it's been years. When I closed it down, I was kind of like, wow, okay, I don't have to think about this stuff. It clears up. So, and funnily enough, I always assumed that one of my reasons why I wanted to close it down was to work on the next idea. And since then, in like 2 years or something, I've had several ideas, but none that have really stood out. And I really sort of imagined that I would jump onto the next idea and, that would be the one. But actually, I've given myself quite a lot of time off from thinking about doing stuff that is just going to cost me money and time and stress and stuff like that. And it's quite nice. It really is.
And you feel better for it. You're saying about your lifestyle. You know your capacity now, which is great.
Yeah.
Right. We talked a lot about work, health, side projects and stuff like that. What the hell do you do to just relax? What do you do out of hours?
So yeah, I walk the dog, which I quite like. We've got a 3-year-old cockapoo called Betsy. She's a great big white fluffy thing. Well, she's little really. She's not big. She's big in my heart anyway.
Oh.
So I watch a lot of TV. I'm really obsessed with TV box sets. I kind of consume them all. I'm just sort of like addicted to it, and I kind of I love being absorbed by it all. I think it's, amazing. We live in such an amazing world with streaming services and all the things that are coming as well in the next couple of years, like Disney Plus and all sorts, is going to be interesting for the UK market anyway. I just like my own time. We go out for cocktails with the wife and friends. We'll go for long walks. We'll, exercise again is, a big space for me to relax. Quite often before workout, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this, and then I come back and I'm absolutely sort of like buzzing. So from that side of things, but yeah, no, I think I'm like, to be fair, I'm quite a boring person. My wife will say I'm quite a boring person, but like it's all good. It works for me.
You got it working. You seem happy. You got health to your advantage. You got work coming in. You know your limits, and I think it sounds like you got a good balance of that stuff going on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I like to make people laugh. Just recorded a bit of a funny Christmas podcast improv thing with a couple of friends at the weekend, and we got to edit that and stuff. So I'd quite like to do that a bit longer term, and it was just fun being really stupid with some old friends.
I like the fact that you're getting on the podcast bandwagon again as well. A lot of people are doing this, and I've been doing podcasts for too many years, to be honest. I've not done the speaking part. I've always done like the music side of it. I don't know if you've seen it all, but I've got like this house music podcast that I've been doing since 2005. So when you were saying earlier about letting things go, I think I've got to that point where there are awesome people out there doing this now, and I don't really have the time, but I still have this sort of emotional connection to doing it. And there are a few people that follow and that they keep engaging, going, great to see another mix go out. I'm like, oh, don't say that, because I want someone to say, just stop doing it. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're trying to find little projects to do on the side that aren't major commitments.
That's the thing that, like, so I used to do, when we did Howler, I used to do a Howler podcast called the Howler Cast, and we take jokes from the week, and people really liked it. We only had like 100 listeners or whatever a week, but it was fun. It was really good fun to do. And this podcast we just kind of recorded. I've always wanted to do a bit of improv and do silly voices and kind of, I'm a really creative person, so I tell a story and I'll throw stuff out there just to sort of try and offend or confuse my friend sitting opposite me, and it's just such a good fun, and I want to try and do that more. Like my friend Alex has a kid now, and so you don't see much of him, and Stuart moved away to London, so I don't see much of him. So when we did get into that room together for the first time in, like, I don't know, a year or whatever, it was just so fun. It was just so much fun. But so I want to do more stuff like that, and I've got all the podcast equipment, so I should be doing stuff. But as you said, it really needs to just be, if it works for you, then keep doing it. I think Howler at one point stopped working for me, and I fell out of love with it. So as soon as you'll know when that time comes, and you just got to make that tough decision, really.
You have, but you've got to enjoy what you do, and I think that's what you've got across there. It's fun. If you're not enjoying it, stop it. If you enjoyed it, do it. Just find the time, but you do have to improvise. You might have to want to hook up with one of the other guys I've recorded a podcast with, Dom Hodgson, because he did a comedy circuit up north.
Oh, cool.
He's had to give it up a bit more now because of his lifestyles, but I think he did some improv as well. So you'll find him on the side community if you want to hook up with him later on.
Yeah, sounds good.
And then maybe you guys can do some joke version of this or something. We'll just leave you to it.
Yeah.
So, final thing, really, for anyone who does want to come and work in the design or tech scene, what would be your number one tip?
So what really worked with me in the early days was I designed UI, so app designs and stuff for myself. So I would design like a minimalist Twitter version or a Facebook thing, or, those things are huge now and you probably wouldn't really get away with it, but just create your own things and just get a portfolio out there, because, it really worked for me by just basically like having these fake projects, and like sadly now fake projects seem to be consuming everything. Like if you go on Dribble, it's just full of impractical fake products that just don't work. I've always been sent reference by clients going, oh, they've done this, and I'm like, yeah, but that wouldn't work in the real world because the buttons are too small or whatever. But you'll learn from it. Just keep plugging away. There's so many free tools. Like Figma is absolutely amazing, and I'm quite new to Figma, but like it's basically like it's got prototyping, it's got design, it's got commenting, it's got everything that you need to basically create a prototyped app design for a free package. There's so many tutorials out there. We live in a world that we're just sort of blessed with loads of free content. Just go out there and do something, really. Show as many people as you can, get feedback. Just don't be shy, don't be afraid of failure, because I think we've all learned with the side projects is you do have to fail, but every failure is a new thing you've learned that you won't do next time.
Oh, that's very wise. It's a nice ending to that. But I agree with you completely. You need to build up your portfolio, find these fake projects, as you call them. Even if it's just a concept, just go and have a hack around in a Sketch or Figma for a bit.
But I don't ever work for free. Working for free, nobody wants to work for free. If somebody wants you to test out your app design skills or whatever, charge something, even if it's like 500 quid or whatever, just to sort of keep it worth your while. Just don't work for free. Nobody wants to work for free. I always get, oh, this would be great for your portfolio, it'd be really great for your career. No, it won't. Don't do it.
I like that as well. It never work for free. I mean, if people are worried about spending money on you or they haven't got the budget, just say, fine, you buy me a laptop then when you've got the budget come in or something. Just give them a contract saying, I'll build you a website if you give me a computer at the end of it or something.
And one of my biggest things to do is double your rates. Just double your rates. Seriously, whatever you're earning, somebody will pay double, and then you don't have to work as hard. So do that.
Well, pro tip from a seasoned veteran then.
That's only because I've spent years and years earning not a lot of money, and then you kind of realise it's not worth the effort. And a friend of a friend once explained it to me. He said that like if you're pitching for work and there's 3 designers, you're one of the designers. Let's say 2 designers are charging £60 an hour and you're charging £25 an hour, then you're going to look cheap. You should be charging £60 an hour, and then they will always pick the person in the middle or towards the top. And if you are half the rate of everybody else, they're going to think like, what's wrong with this guy? And it's true. It's really helped me in that career. That little conversation in I've only met him a couple of times since, and a friend of my friend Ben, I believe he was called Ant, he just told me that bit of advice, and that has really stuck with me, and it's really helped my career. So little tidbits like that you pick up along the way are just valuable, really.
It is very valuable. That's good stuff, and I think that helps anyone who's listening in to this. if you want to go out there, don't undervalue your work. Maybe make sure that you are on a decent market rate and don't undercut people, because all it does is everyone loses out on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Good stuff, dude. I think that is all. Do you want to wrap up and just tell our wonderful audience how they can find your stuff, how they can get in contact, and maybe follow you on your health kick, maybe?
Yeah. So, you can see my work on mikehince.com. So that is MikeHince.com. That's all my portfolio stuff, my business things. Instagram, Twitter, I'm Zero Mike with zero instead of spelling it, zero as in ZER0 Mike. Especially on Instagram, I post a lot of silly things on the Instagram stories, including like workout pics and stuff. So if you're interested in seeing a skinny man pose,
always,
you're more than welcome to engage. Always, yeah. And that's it, really. I don't really do the modern ones like Snapchat and stuff. I'm too old for that.
We are too old for that, I think. All the dodgy unicorn filters. That's great, mate. Thanks ever so much for joining us on the Make Life Work podcast. As always, absolute pleasure to have you on board. Make sure you keep sharing your stories as well. I'm enjoying it. It's great to see a like-minded, health-conscious, 30-plus living in the sticks. We've got a lot in common.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's really good talking to you.
I appreciate you coming on, mate. And hopefully we'll catch up again soon. Maybe next year at some point.
Sounds good.
Cool. For all our listeners of the show, please let us know your thoughts of the episode and all the other discussions we've had so far. You can find me on Twitter as @Sci, Mike as Zero Mike. That's zero with a zero. So ZER0 Mike. Or if you prefer, you can email sci@jobling.com with any of your thoughts. The Make Life Work podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and most popular podcast apps on the market. So make sure you subscribe and leave a rating or a review for us. For all the series archives, show notes, and links to where you can find everything, pop along to my website, scijobling.com/makelifework. If you'd like to come on the podcast to share your story, get in touch and we'll work something out. You can also join me and some of the other people from Side Project Community on the side by visiting ontheside.network, and that will take you straight through to our Slack workspace. That's all from me. Take care.